We are live. Hey, thank you, Dana, and welcome everyone to a very special Cat Sebastian spring chat. If you're not familiar with me, I am Kelly. I am one of the founders of the Seasonally Booked Up Book Club. We just spent our spring reading 9 incredible Cat Sebastian books, and I am thrilled, overjoyed to be joined by the author herself tonight. Cat, thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
We are too. We have been just thriving in all of the grumps and sunshines and idiots in love and caretaking and so many delicious tropes all season long. So for tonight's chat, a little housekeeping for everyone. I have been compiling my burning questions, our members' burning questions. So we will start there. At the end of the hour, we will have room for more audience questions. If anyone has thought of anything new, Dana can bring that up on screen. We will have a little game at the end as well for everyone to participate in. And just a heads up, there will be possible spoilers for any of the books that we read this season. And I think that's it. Kat, are we ready to dive in?
Yeah.
Awesome. So we started our read along with your very first book, The Soldier of Scoundrel. And we were immediately blown away by like the strength of your authorial voice in your debut book. How did you go about building that and kind of having a start that so clearly cemented your humor, your tone, and kind of your ethos of this be gay, do crime?
That's the Soldier of Scoundrel is like the first thing I wrote, basically. Okay, like it's the first thing I finished. Like there had been drabbles and there had been like I had a chapter here or a chapter there that like I kind of always knew that wasn't going to go anywhere. But like once I got the idea for this book, it just sort of like I didn't think about voice and I didn't, you know what I mean? Like I was just like this is just like this, I'm just going to tell the story. I'm going to make it so that there are as few as possible barriers to entry to the story. You know what I mean? Like I didn't want I kept thinking like how does like Loretta Chase do it? You know what I mean? Like I had been like that's like I was like I want to do this like Loretta Chase but queer. Like I want like because I had like read like 15 consecutive Loretta Chase books at that moment, and I was like,
as one does.
What I need. I was like, what I need, like is like a gay Loretta Chase book. Like that's what that's what I need to be like a whole and happy person. And so I'm going to produce that. And of course that's not what the book is at all. You know what I mean? Like that's not it at all. But that was kind of like that sort of like historical voice was kind of what I was going for, But other than that, I didn't really think about it. I just was like, I'm going to write a book. And then when the book was finished, I'm going to make it a better book. And here we are. Like it all worked. Like there was no big plan, and it all worked out. And I feel really lucky that like my like not particularly well thought out decisions worked out for me, and that people like the books.
Do you feel like it was kind of freeing in a way for Loretta Chase, right? We have heroines shooting the heroes on the page. Like it almost feels like anything goes for Loretta. Did that kind of give you a chance to be like, all right, I can do whatever here?
I mean, the thing is, like, and I don't know if I knew this while I was writing the first book, like that I am not capable of that at all. Like that is like not a strength I have as an author, right? Like I'm writing, like I write people who are like, I can't write a plausible villain to save my life. And like I structure stories around the fact that I can't do that. Like it's when I try, it winds up being like the most like cardboard cutout, like mustachio twirling Saturday morning cartoon villain, like so implausible. And so instead I don't. And but yes, like when you're looking at something like the body of historical romance that I was working with at that time, right? Like had everything in it. Like everything. Like you have the secret baby, you have like every crazy thing a person can possibly do, except it's almost universally straight, right? So like honestly, queering it was like the least weird thing that I could possibly have done.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we have like Lorraine Heath doing like, I'm gonna marry my twins. Like what? Like yeah, it's all
like these are just guys like doing their job and having a normal life. I mean, like, and obviously there were like that, like, and I realized pretty soon after writing it that there were other people writing queer regencies, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just that there's always the discoverability issue. Like, if you're not super connected to, reading communities, you just can't find things very easily.
Definitely. And I feel like that was kind of my experience coming to your books, right? I read The Lawrence Brown Affair. I had been a historical romance reader my whole life. And I was like, wait, historical comes in gay? Like, gay can happen here? Like,
Right.
and I feel like as a reader, I've, gotten so lucky to see your journey as an author and also to see how much growth there has been in queer romance and queer historicals. I'm curious what your experience has been as an author, kind of growing alongside that as the canon has gotten bigger, as much as it still does need to grow.
Yeah, I think that, like, looking back, I think it was 2015, it was late 2015, early 2016 when I sold that first book. And I think that a lot of that is being in the right place at the right time. Like, looking at what came in almost immediately after, right? People wanted this. Like, people were really looking for this. And I think it is like the fact that you can pick up that I could do nothing but read queer historical romance, genre romance, not like historical fiction that happens to be like, we don't have to like lean on Sarah Waters anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I could do nothing but read that all year long. Okay. Yeah. And still never run out of anything to read, just reading new releases. And that is not something that I could have foreseen. And it is so awesome. Also, like, I think it was all men, like in 2016, 2017. And right now there's like a whole variety of like queer pairings. So, and groupings, and that's another thing that's like the needle has moved pretty far in just a couple of years.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think, I couldn't have imagined when I first picked up something like Lawrence Brown, like the amount of sapphic books, the amount of poly books, like there's so much range now. And it's so exciting because it feels like there really is something for everyone, no matter what your personal trope niche is,
Yeah. Yep.
And I think it's interesting what you were saying before about the inability to write villains. Because I think we kind of picked up on throughout a lot of your books, you have really complex parents. And we kind of kept saying, like, another author would make this character a villain, but Cat is really like not taking away any of the harm that was done, but also kind of revealing to the protagonist that their parent is also a human and has fucked up to some varying degree. And I'm curious, is it the villainry and like that draws you to that theme, or is there something else that you're looking to explore there?
So with the father in the Sedgwicks, okay, like Mr. Sedgwick, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that like the three different sons all have different ideas about like whether their father is a villain, right? Like, there's, you know what I mean? Like, there's like they've all come to different conclusions about that. And like I wanted, like, when I wrote the first book, I mean, Ben doesn't think his father is a villain. He thinks his father is just like lazy, right? And like, I didn't realize until after I wrote it and was talking to a friend who has like much more experience with parents who were really not great. And she was like, like, he's horrible. You know what I mean? Like, he's like literally the worst. And I was like, oh my God, like, she's absolutely right. And so, and so in the next book, I wanted to, like, shed a little more light on that. I don't want to rate I can't do justice to like a real, like a horrible parent situation, but I can get as bad as Mr. Sedgwick. Okay. Like, that's about as I'm gonna get. But yeah, like, I mean, there's in Rune of a Rake, Courtney's mother rather is pretty horrible, but like, she's on page for 3 seconds because that's all that's about as much villainy as I could summon up. But yeah, I do like writing parents. I mean, like, that's and the older my kids get, the more I like writing parents, because like, it's like, I'm like, my kids are closer in age to the characters that I'm writing about, right? You know what I mean? I like writing that I enjoyed seeing, like when I did the Daniel Cabot, like I enjoyed writing a middle-aged parent and like having there be like a relationship with an adult child where it isn't perfect and everybody knows it isn't perfect, but it's like real and okay.
Yeah. And I think you're touching on kind of what Sophie is asking here. Yeah, that clearly writing parents does have this impact as a parent yourself. And I think we see that on the page. I know the Cabots have been a particular favorite of our group, and our read along technically ended with "We Could Be So Good." And then Sophie here actually was like, "So what if this week we all read Daniel Cabot because we didn't read it during the read along? So now we're literally just continuing and reading that." And it's been such a joy, and I think we've all really loved, all of the Georgian romances, but have really enjoyed your kind of diversion into the 50s. And I know Elizabeth, one of our members, was really curious about what drew you to that time period and if you feel like you're going to keep playing around in it.
So how I got there is I was writing Tommy Cabot for an anthology, and I didn't really, I mean, I knew it was a novella. I didn't think it would be a world that I revisited. I was just sort of like, what if the Kennedys be gay? And I like there was nothing more than that. And as I was writing it, I really loved it. And it's like I knew before I finished writing it that I was going to go back there. It's like it's such a mythologized period of time, right? Like that's like when people talk about like the good old days, that's what they're supposed to be, and like they're terrible. Like everybody, we all like kind of know they're terrible, awful times. And yet like there's a sort of glow about them, especially late 50s, early 60s, because that's like when we first see ourselves on TV, right? Like that's when you see like color television and families sitting down to dinner in their nice houses, and everybody's dressed up for dinner or whatever. And that didn't happen. That's not real for practically anybody. And so with We Could Be So Good, I kept thinking about like, what is it like to know you're not getting that, right? To have this like vision of like what your life is supposed to be held up as not only like the best, like most like fulfilling thing that you can do as a person, but also like patriotic, right? Like what you need, this is like what you need to do for your country, like, and to know you're not going to be doing that and to kind of want to do it anyway, right? And it's to want this thing that you're not supposed to have and that also you recognize as like kind of basic, like that idea sort of stuck with me, and that's such a 50s idea, and so that's how that handful of books happened. Am I going to stay in the 50s? So the next book is 1960 because it was going to be 1959, and then I realized I had written myself into a corner. Like I had to like it had to be a year in the future after We Could Be So Good. Like it involves another there's the sad gay librarian and We Could Be So Good. Okay. Yeah. Like, right. Okay. So he winds up getting assigned to cover a baseball team. Okay. But there isn't a baseball team. Okay. Like it needs to go a year ahead so I can make up. Okay. You see what I mean? Like that's.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's 1960, but it's still the same basic time period. After that, I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea. I really like the 20th century and I like America. So that I think is like for sure. It'll be somewhere in the 20th century and it'll be somewhere in America. Okay. That's all I know.
Yeah. And especially I think there's so many interesting things happening around that time period. Like you're getting closer to the Stonewall riots, especially if you're going to stick around New York. So I can see where I think it's really fertile ground for these stories. And I think also so refreshing for readers, who like, I love kind of the Regency ballroom fantasies, but if we can step outside of England and that kind of world, I feel like it's just a whole different experience. You can take so much more from it in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, like I enjoy reading. Like I obviously enjoy Regency romance. Like I wrote 12 of them or whatever, right? Like, and I just like something happened like when I was writing the last two like were I was like chafing at the bit. Like I like you know what I mean? Like I enjoyed writing the books, but like I was like we were at the end, like we were hitting a wall. Like there was no
Yeah.
like and there was nothing that could happen to make me write another book with a cravat in it. Like it could not like no horses, no cravats. Like I don't want to talk about it.
We have telephones now. Like it's a whole new world.
I was like, these jokers need a phone. Okay. Like and like no more curricles. So, I was just like, I mean, I ran out of plausible story to happen at that period of time, right? I'm sure I'll at some point revisit some other part of the past, but it is like really refreshing to like do something more recent and where like the research is just like right there at your fingertips, right? Like when like I want to know how the phone worked, I asked my mom,
Right.
like that is it feels like it just feels like a different type of storytelling, even though at the end of the day it's the same thing.
Exactly.
The process is a little different.
Right. I unintentionally followed up We Could Be So Good with this audiobook called Hi Honey, I'm Homo. And it's nonfiction. It's so great, right? It's nonfiction and it's all about queerness and the American sitcom. And it starts like back at the first sitcoms and then is going forward in time, tracking queer representation and its impact on the queer liberation movement.
Right.
It is so good, and it felt like a really appropriate follow-up.
Wait, no, because there's that guy, what's his name from the Mary Tyler Moore Show? There's him,
yes.
And there's there's like there were these like very visible like gay icons, and if you knew what you were looking for, like they were on your television, and if you didn't know, you didn't know. And I wish I could think of his name. Okay, but now I'm writing down Hi Honey, I'm Homo, and let's hope that tomorrow when I go I know what that means.
Right, exactly. It's phenomenal. I've been telling everyone about it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. But yeah, I think you kind of entered the 50 in the Cabots. And then we obviously have it in We Could Be So Good. And I think you were saying before we jumped on live, this book is kind of different from you. We have third person present as a tense. We have it divided into parts that are split into the POV. I was curious what inspired those choices and if the writing process felt really different because of it.
So like I was thinking like third person present is like a sort of like breezy contemporary voice. And again, like I don't know if this is something that really makes sense to readers, or even like is that real? Is that only in my head? Like I don't know. But it felt like writing in third person present helped me get into a sort of like looser, breezier, lighter narrative, like I don't know if that's just like, oh, like I'm gonna have different luck if I sit in a different chair. Like I don't know. But it felt like the story happened really, really quickly, and because of that, the parts this book was super easy to write. Like it's like it was really clear from the beginning that there needed to be like lumps of story, like that I couldn't toggle back and forth, because like this thing is happening to Nick, and then this thing is happening to Andy, and we want to be in like his head when this is happening, and you know what I mean, and then we want to be in Nick's head when the other thing is happening, and that going back and forth would sort of disrupt that, I was thinking. And again, like could the story have worked with alternating chapters, POV? Like yeah, sure, it could have, but it felt more natural to do it this way. And also like whenever when you've done 15 or whatever books in a certain mode, right, then doing anything different makes you feel like you're doing something different, right?
Right.
And like, and I don't, and again, like I never know whether that's like just again, like just like I'll write in a different ink, you know, like I don't know, or if it really does change the reader experience. But it made me feel like I was writing something slightly different, but like still in the same, like, you know, still in the same like bucket of like Cat Sebastian stories, you know.
Definitely. I'm having a very like English class moment where I had a very different theory about why you did third person.
Oh, I want to hear it, and then I'll go with that. We'll go with that. That'll be the new narrative.
Well, because I mean, I think this book just feels so much in conversation with everything that's happening right now, and all of these laws that are cropping up around, you know, trans identity, queer identity. To me, it felt like third person present was reminding the reader that it was like, this is happening now. It adds a sense of urgency and connection to me, that I felt like really strong. And it was kind of in my head, I was telling everyone, I was like, yes, I think this is Kat's way of being like, you can't look away from this. This isn't a past issue, it's a present issue. Like,
So like I was thinking, like, as I was writing it, like the fact that like you never want to write a book in the 50s and be like, this resonates, right? Like that's a really bad, that's like, and as I was writing it, I was like very aware, like, because as I like things were like getting worse as I was, you know what I mean, like as I was writing it. I didn't like consciously tie the third person present to that, but I will be sure to say that I did in the future. I mean, it sounds right too, you know, like also because like that is
sense to me.
Like that's like you expect a contemporary to be written, like something taking place today to be written in that point of view. So like, okay, yeah, I like it. I'm really very smart.
There you go. You are genius. Gosh, I love that. Okay, sorry, I lost track on my questions here for a second. I want to dip back to the Cabot series really quickly. You know, we're doing different generations within a family there. And our group was really curious. We had two big questions. A, whether that we would ever see a Pat and Harry story, and B, if you would ever do generations of other families. So we really fell in love with Leontine from A Delicate Deception. And when she's grown up, she's going to be incredible. So I'm curious if that was something that you thought about at all.
So I can't imagine revisiting a book that I wrote more than like 3 or 4 years ago and like making any sense of it in my head, right? Like there's like, you know, like, and when authors do this, I'm like, oh my God, like they're incredible. Like there must be a force of nature to have any idea what they wrote 4 years ago. Like it would be like I was writing fan fiction of somebody else's work, right? I every now and then someone asks about her and about Simon and Lawrence Brown. Yeah, and like I have nothing against the idea, but like I couldn't see myself actually like being successfully doing justice to that idea, you know. Oh, and as for Pat and Harry, okay, so like I have part of a book written, and then I realized like 2 days ago that might need to be a totally different book for something undisclosed. Okay. But like I could take those characters and make them into different people, which is like not something that's like, you know, and I haven't done that before, but like that story makes sense for different people, and it might, I don't know. So it's sitting there as one file title on my computer, and it might turn into something else. We'll all find out.
Right? Like we'll see in like 2 years from now.
Right? But yeah, I love Pat and Harry, and I always intended to write something for them. And like it's just been slow.
I feel like we're not living in the most conducive environment for creativity right now. The timeline is not helpful.
No.
But speaking of fan fiction, I know that you're an avid fan fiction reader. And I was curious if you, in fantasy world, were able to write fan fiction for any of your characters, like Coffee Shop AU for one of your characters. Which characters would it be, and what would your fan fiction bend on it be?
It's so funny because like the books that I write are the fan fiction AU of some other much more like violent and plotty story, right? Like this is the like
They're all the coffee shop AU.
Right. Okay. So like, I think that you could do like, oh God. I think Lawrence Brown, like a Lawrence Brown coffee shop AU. Like I like,
would love that.
yeah. I would read that. I wouldn't read it because like I couldn't read my own anything of it. But like, you know what I mean? Like if someone else had written the book, I would read the fanfic
Right.
of
That
that
is
for
like, I
sure.
would love to read that. Yes, I
Yeah.
agree. I would happily read anything more about Lauren.
Yeah. No, totally. That's like somebody should write that.
Right. I'll let my people know. We'll get on it. Oh my gosh. So another thing that we really loved in reading all of these books, I think one of my personal favorite tropes is caretaking. And I think you write the caretaking trope so beautifully. And you do it in this way that it feels we see characters like actively taking care of each other, which is really beautiful. And I think sometimes in a physical sense, in an emotional sense, a mental sense. But I feel like as an author, you extend that to the reader. Where no matter what the topic is, you have this way of making the reader feel like you're caretaking for them as well, making sure that they're safe, they're not triggered, they know that they're okay as they read through your books. And I'm curious how intentional that is and how that ends up impacting your writing process.
Yeah, that's definitely a thing. Like I like, you know how sometimes like a narrator can sort of like intrude, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, and there are things that we're told to do as writers to like make that not happen. Like she saw, like he heard, whatever. Okay. Instead, you can just get rid of that, and because we're already in the point. Okay. So like when we're in a really tense scene, which again, they don't happen super often in my books, or I try to make it more intrusive, like, you know what I mean, like where I don't know if it works, but like in my head it works, you know, like where there's more of those like markers of like, this is a story being told to you, you know, like there's like, it's, I feel like it lowers the stakes, and I don't know if it does, but and like, and I don't want to say that I try to pull my punches because I don't think I'm capable of a punch. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think like, I was just reading, like, I just finished the third book in Freya Marsky's, like, The Last Binding. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And the first two books are like so good, and the third is even better. And I'm like losing my mind over it. Like, I'm gonna wind up like in a perpetual loop of rereading these books for like a month. And like they're so tense, all right, like they're so like where I want, like I was like, I had violent urges, do you know what I mean, like I wanted to kill the villain with my own hands. I'm like whispering to like the NetGalley app, like, just kill him, like, you know what I mean, like it's okay, don't have scruples, you know. But like but like and I'm like, why can't I write that kind of villain? I'm like, well, it's because you can't write that kind of villain. You know what I mean? Like, and like I can't write that kind of scene where it's like, I just am not capable of it. I'm a basket case. Like I need to, like, everything needs to be, like kind of okay, you know, in order for me to effectively tell the story. And so I try to convey that like we're all okay to the reader also. That we can all share in the fact that it's like, okay.
Yeah, which I do think. I think you're immensely successful at. And I think it's what makes your book such great comfort reads, because I think a lot of us do have that like duality where I tend to love like really, really high intense angst. And then I also need something where I'm like, okay, a little bit less though, like a pinch of angst and some softness, you know?
Exactly. Where it's like there's different types of food, right? Like I'm like, I can't express like how delighted I am by this like incredibly tense, like this about the last binding, right? You know what I mean? Like, and I wonder if part of it is because that's so different from what, right? You know, and it's and like it is wonderful that you can go and read something like dark and twisty and like creepy and whatever, and then pivot, you know, and read something else. Like I love that. It makes me feel better about things that are like, you know, like sometimes like I'll get myself into, I'll need to be talked off of a ledge, right? You know, where I'm like, Like what, like how come, like why can't I tell a story? You know, like why can't I, like I want like something intricately plotted, you know, where you're like, oh my God, when like the final in the final act, you know, and the answer is like probably I could, you know, if I really worked really hard and like honed my craft for years, right? But then everybody would be sad.
Yes, we would pick it up and be like, Cat.
Like I could spend 3 years. I could spend 3 years learning how to do something that would just make everyone mad and sad. Like it's not worth it.
And I feel like it feels especially illustrated in We Could Be So Good, right? Like I think a different author would have this like, okay, we're on the streets and we're like being threatened by cops, and like that is happening here. But this is like the domestic side of that. It is the coffee shop AU of that, of like what is building a life. And when we were talking about it in our live last week, we were talking about kind of, it feels like how you capture the regular human moments of life, right? And we currently are living under very dramatic, stressful circumstances. But, you know, when our book club is hanging out, we're like, okay, we're just talking about regular life stuff. Like, oh, I forgot my laundry in the dryer. It's still wet now. Like those little things. And I feel like your books capture those things, that it's like, okay, we can't always be at the high level. We have to be at the human level, you know?
Yeah. And that's like, you can do a lot with that, right? Like it's one person bringing a cup of coffee to another person, or like whatever, a cake, anything. You know, I don't think I've written a single book where somebody doesn't bring some kind of beverage or food to someone else, and the other person imbues that with a whole lot of meaning. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be the head of their enemy. Do you know what I mean? Like, right. And it's right? Like all that matters is that the person that they like either willingly or unwillingly have feelings for has done something nice for them, right? Like and in my books it's going to be the coffee or like the muffin, you know, and not the head of your enemy, you know.
Exactly. And I think too it's a nice reminder, you know, I think your books are obviously such a safe space for queer people, a reminder that our stories are worth hearing, worth telling. But I feel like, you know, most of us, there's like all this, you know, main character energy like on the internet, and most of us maybe aren't the main characters in the scheme of the world, but it feels like our stories are still worth telling and worth reading, even if they're the quiet ones.
That is like, I haven't thought of it like that, but that makes perfect sense, where it's like people who, like, not everybody is going to be in the limelight, and a lot of people would rather die than be in the limelight, right? And they just want to like do their thing, and like that's enough.
Yeah, like a delicate deception. I think that's what I love about that so much, when she kind of stands up and is like, I know what my limits are. They are within this area, this radius.
Right.
And I'm happy with that, you know?
Yeah.
So I think when coming back to kind of these familiar tropes and themes, I feel like you have such a gift for making them feel fresh every time. What kind of goes into, if you're coming back to A Grump and Sunshine, Idiots in Love, to making it feel like, okay, this is a brand new experience?
I think that like part of it is when I have finished writing a book, I immediately forget everything that's in it. Okay. Like it's easy to go then write something else. And like, every now and then though, I will go back and open a book and be like, oh my God, like I reused a line. Like, like that's total nightmare fuel, but like it's happened.
We've read 9 and we didn't notice any.
Oh, really? So. I was like so worried because like when I binge read an author, you know, the thing where like it doesn't matter who it is, but like you notice their tics and you can develop an allergy. Yeah. Okay. Like, and it's like overexposure or something, right? And like it's happened where I'm like, oh my gosh, like I can't read this author for like another year. Like I have to just take a break. It's for our own good, you know. I think in order to make the same thing, it's like when I'm writing, I don't at the beginning have a really firm sense of who the characters are. Like I know that like I'll be like, okay, so I've got like a hard-boiled reporter and I've got like a kind of spoiled boss's son. But really who they are and like what matters to them is something that usually hits me about halfway through the first draft. And then, you know, you go back and like, and then I'll get more and like, and right through line edits. Like I'm sort of like finessing who that character. I think that when everything is then, when like the trope is really tied down to who that specific character is, I think it's less likely to feel like it's been like you're doing a rerun, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I that's my working theory. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think your books are so character driven that it makes sense that they're tied in. And I do love what Myri is saying here about those ticks. I do think I understand what you're saying about the allergy. And I think sometimes it can also be like a fun thing to track.
That is like enormously reassuring. Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We our very first read along as a group was Sarah MacLean, and we read every book that she had written to that point.
Oh wow.
And we just called them like MacLeanisms. And like we would just track them, and like in a way that we loved, you know, like the heroes are always like, she is not for me. Like it's just that phrase over and over and over. And it's just like, so now every time I see it, I'm like, oh, Sarah.
Like, that is such a good example, because I know exactly what you mean. And I love that too about her books. You know?
Exactly. I'm like, oh, it's the moment. It's happening. Yeah. Like, yeah, I think it can be such a joy. All right, I think I'm going to do maybe 2 more questions before we switch into our game. And then after the game, we'll take some audience questions. But so I want to talk about Happily Ever Afters, as the endings of your books obviously push back on kind of the typical heteronormative version of what AGA has historically looked like in historical romance. And I feel like you often leave characters kind of on the precipice of some exciting new adventure. So I just wanted to know, kind of in writing romance, what does a queer happily ever after mean to you?
So like one thing that like every few months I like decide to have a crisis about whether I'm writing something really heteronormative. Okay. Like, and again, like I like obviously resolve this in the same way every time, given that I'm still writing like books where like, and like if I'm writing like a simulacrum of like heterosexual marriage, like is that like something like deeply assimilationist and problematic, right? And I think that it is, if that's the only kind of happy ending you see, right?
Yeah.
But and also there's a reason why heterosexual marriage, you know, was something that like queer people had to fight for, right? Like it is like people do like it, you know, like it's not the be all and end all, right? It's not the end of queer liberation, right? Like it is something that it's like, it's a classic for a reason, right? You know, like it's okay to watch. Yeah. But like every couple of months I have to have that like conversation with myself. I don't know what the question was, Kelly. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
What does that
mean to you?
I think that I don't think there's any one answer, right? Like sometimes it's going to be something going to be like deeply domestic and like people sharing a home, and like home, it's going to be like homemaking in like its most basic sense. And other times it's not going to be, I think like Rune of a Rake, I don't think they even live together at the end. Like, I don't think they even contemplate living together. They will never live together. Do you know what I mean? Like nobody can live with either of them.
Poor Julian.
It simply is not possible. Yes. You know? They're both acquired tastes. but like, it's, I think that yeah, I don't have a good answer. I wish I did, but I think there's huge variability, and that's a feature.
Yeah. And I think we definitely saw that. And I think it's really exciting, I think, to see those variety of endings. And we definitely, I know Sophie in particular, one of our members, really loved that home theory. You have like quite a few books where characters are kind of remaking a home, whether it's because like Lawrence Brown, where the home is in dire need of repair, or it's, you know, the ending of Soldier of Scoundrel, where they're just getting a home together. And kind of that as the symbolism, almost rather than marriage, of like, this is us starting a life together on our own terms and what that means. Yeah, I also I like the idea of
like setting up a home. Like I like that. I like living with my person. Do you know what I mean? Like I like that. Like the fact that like he brings me coffee in bed, like even when I don't deserve it, like really, is like really an enormous source of joy in my life, you know? And I really and like so that is the easiest like kind of happy ending for me to envision. Okay. And also like at various points in writing my books, I have been in like heavily involved in like real estate drama, you know, where you know what I mean? Like there's when you are buying and selling a house, or when you're trying to figure out like how to cram extra children in a house, or like whatever it is, right? Like it is, and you're trying to figure out how these people are going to be happy. Like what I'm thinking of is like house. Like it's right, you know what I mean? Like it's really, really like, and so to have that settled, I'm like, what can they possibly complain about? You know what I mean? Like,
there's a roof over their heads.
That's right. They fit all their people in it, you know.
Right.
They have like, you know, like clear title or whatever, you know.
Right. Life imitates art.
Right.
I love it.
Yes.
All right, transitioning. Life imitates art. So your covers have been transitioning lately. We have these gorgeous covers of models, and then we've been moving into some illustrated designs. We're curious, do the illustrated designs mean that you get any more input than you typically would with models, or have you found that it's very similar?
So all of the photograph covers, right? Those are like pre-existing photo shoots, right? Okay. A few of them have two guys from two different photo shoots like photoshopped together. Okay. I can't think of which ones they are. Which ones? I think the second Sedgwick book for sure, and possibly the first Sedgwick book.
Okay.
I think that's one of them.
Maybe, or my babies.
That one, I think they're together. I think that's two guys actually together. Yeah.
Okay, this is one of my favorite covers.
Yeah, that is like easily one of my favorites too.
And yeah, we have. I think these are all the ones at my fingertips.
And like, so basically, that's like there was especially the ones that had to be where you're talking about two different pictures. That's like that was like I am very grateful for the people at Avon who like managed to make that happen, like with whatever budget they had going on at the time, right? The illustrated covers happened at the same time that I moved to trade paperback, which means there's more of a budget anyway. And I got to go find the artist, and like that was exciting for me, you know.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. And so, and also like there's like this is all like what does the market like? You know what I mean? Like that's like at the end of the day, this is all like this is a package for a book, and the goal is for people to buy the package, right? And so I try not to have feelings about which way the pendulum is swinging. You know what I mean? Like, are we gonna do a photograph? Are we gonna, you know what I mean? Like, and it's, you know, like, But I did enjoy picking the artist. That was actually really, really fun.
That is really neat. I feel like I would get lost in a rabbit hole of just like.
Oh, well, I immediately had never seen art before in my life. Like when asked for an illustrator, I was like, well, I have never heard of one. You know, like there are no illustrators.
No. Never been to a museum, don't know art.
No. And so I am, and like right after I had realized that like I'm about as ignorant as you can be with that, I happened to run across something else that this artist had done. Of course, now I'm blanking on their name, but like I had run into something else, and I was like, yes, them, you know. And so I was able to like give a name to my editor, and they happened to say yes, and so that was great.
That's amazing, and I mean they're doing a fantastic job. The covers have been really beautiful. All right, so we are going to shift into our game. So everyone who's watching, you're welcome to play. Give your answers in the comments. And then after, we'll take some audience questions. So think of your questions now, but we're going to do a little quick round of Would You Rather. So Kat, to start, would you rather go to the picnic at the end of The Ruin of a Rake or the rooftop party in We Could Be So Good?
Oh man. So like I don't want to climb up 6 flights of stairs like at all. Okay. But I bet you whatever you have to do to get to the picnic is also a pain. Okay. So I think I'd rather go to the rooftop party. Yeah.
Right, that's fair. I feel like the rooftop party seems like so fun and great views. I feel like they're gonna have great drinks. Like we got
Yeah.
a lot of rich people there.
Yeah.
But I feel like the picnic like lives in my heart that I'm like, I feel like I couldn't not go
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they would both be great parties. I do really love that you tend to end a lot of your books on kind of like a big queer party. It's very exciting. Would you rather, I see lots of love for the picnic, lots of love for the rooftop. Everyone seems pretty torn, which feels relatable. Okay, next question. Would you rather take a road trip with Peter and Caleb or with Marion and Rob?
Okay. So I think that the weather's better for Peter and Caleb. Okay, like that's a factor. But I think that like I would feel like much more of a third wheel with Peter and Caleb. You know?
I think so. They're very horny.
They would be like too busy pushing one another up against things, and it would be like really, really awkward. Whereas like we, like I think it is canonical that like Rob is very charming and Marion just sits there and hisses, and like that's like so like no matter like what you want to do, you either have someone to talk to or somebody to like be quietly angry with. So I would go with Marion and Rob.
Yes, I feel like that would be my answer too. Yes, I think anything to hang out with Marion would be great. Okay, the car is a solid.
That is a really good reason, the car. Yeah. But like the car had like no seatbelts. There's no airbags,
right.
Like...
At your own risk. And if you're with Rob, you're probably guaranteed to get an animal along the way. Like you will adopt a 3-legged hedgehog or a cat. Like
This is a good point.
Pro.
Yeah.
All right. Our next one is, speaking of animals, would you rather adopt the cat who can't climb downstairs in We Could Be So Good, or the dog who thinks you're a sheep from A Delicate Deception?
Oh my God, I forgot about that dog. Oh God.
I love that dog.
Have I ever written a smart animal? Is like really a question now. Okay. Like, no.
I'll say, in our recent reading experience, no, but that's why we love it.
I mean, like I do have like I have one of my dog is not one of like God's thinkers, like just easily confused. But the dog I had before that was really, really, really smart, like way too smart. Yeah. I'm surprised I didn't put him in a book. When there's a dumb dog in a book, it is my dog.
Right.
Let's see. I think I'd go with the dog. I think, yeah.
I think I would as well.
Barnabas.
At least try to protect you.
Somebody said Barnabas. Yeah, Barnabas was smart. Barnabas was like emotionally intelligent and like intelligent. Yes. Yeah. No, you're right.
Exactly.
Right.
He's doing the right thing. She did need a companion on those walks. Okay. Would you rather babysit Leontine from A Delicate Deception, Eliza from Perfect Crimes of Marion Hayes, or the twins from It Takes Two to Tumble?
So the twins from It Takes Two to Tumble are basically my children. Okay. There's not much they got up to that my twins didn't get up to. So not them. Been there.
I've already done that.
I've done my time. Yeah. I'm gonna go with Eliza. She's a baby. Like my kids are old enough now that I can like properly appreciate a baby as like a thing that a person might want to hold and like like be around and like do on purpose. Leontine, no, like she is she needs you would need like danger pay. Like she is a lot. She needs someone who speaks French, and that's not going to be me right now. Eliza, no, she's like all she needs is to be held and thrown in the air occasionally. A+, I can handle it.
Right, done. Yeah. I think Leontine would be fascinating, but also I'd be afraid she's smarter than me. So I'd be concerned about that. I like the adding in the double shot of espresso to keep up with her. I think it'd be necessary. All right, our last one. Would you rather spend a day exploring 1950s New York City or Georgian England?
Oh, that's really hard. So like it's the most boring answer, but like 1950s New York City would be really, really useful to me right now in writing. Like, that would be like the best research trip. Yeah.
Where would you are you allowed to say where you would kind of maybe want to hit up or visit?
So, I would need to visit the Gramercy Park area. Okay, that's one place. And the other major location would be the Polo Grounds, which is where the Mets played for their first year of existence.
Wow.
And it wasn't torn down until like 63. So it would still be there. Yeah.
I love that. Okay, I'm seeing Georgian England, that's the country. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm a little torn on that one. I like just moved from living just outside of the city, like down to North Carolina. So I'm like, do I want to go back to the city? But I think it probably would be really interesting to see the architecture of the time compared to what I know it as.
Well,
I
that's
need
like
a proper bathroom.
I lived in New York from like 96 to 2004. And I went back in 2019 and it was like I was in a different place. You know what I mean? Like I felt like I was in like a Rip Van Winkle situation where like I had been whisked ahead like to a totally different world and it was more than 15 years, right? It was like deeply disorienting. And then when I was reading Daniel Cabot, I realized that like I was like, do I go to New York to research Daniel Cabot? Like, do I do this? Okay, because Daniel's apartment is my apartment that I live. Do you know what I mean? Like I live there, you know. And I was like, do I go and like just check and make sure I haven't gotten anything wrong? Tax deductible, you know, I can take it one of my kids. And then I realized that like my memories of 1980s New York are probably more accurate and useful than anything I could see today.
Wow.
That was like a real moment. You know?
Yeah.
Like, you know?
You're your own historian.
Yeah. Like where it's like I was like, oh man, like, you know, because I was looking at a map and I was like, oh, look at all these gas stations and movie theaters and bowling alleys, right? And like they are not there anymore, but they absolutely were when I in the 80s, you know, and like so yes, but the 50s are far enough back that we're like we're in like it's different.
Yeah,
it's a different
be
thing.
very different. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, I lied. We actually do have one more. Would you rather run a team of vigilantes or run a newspaper?
Oh, vigilantes. Like like all of the research that I did about newspapers was like I don't understand how they do it. Like there's just so much news. Like how do they pick? Like and you're constantly on like the knife's edge of like there's like deadlines and yeah. Team of vigilantes sounds great. Like I don't think I have the organizational chops to be a great like leader of vigilantes, but if I had help, I think I could do it.
Right.
Nothing could help me run a newspaper.
Yeah, I think they're both very intimidating for me, but I kind of feel like you'd have more fun as a vigilante.
That too, right?
Yeah, I like more adventures, very different. Like I could not. That's fair. Dana can't keep a secret, so I think Dana would have a hard time getting away with any crimes. On our vigilante topic, my actual last question. So we have our little crew of vigilantes of Kit, Percy, Rob, Marion. Do you see them ever linking up with our leads from the Soldier of Scoundrel? Since they kind of are running in similar circles of like.
I think that if there wasn't the time gap, do you know what I mean? There's like a 70 or 60, 65-year time gap. If it wasn't for that, they would have to. Like there's no, you know what I mean? Like there's not enough London to contain both Jack and that crew, right? Yeah. Thank God there's the time gap where I would have
Time
been.
gap is rough. See, I'm forgetting about the time gap where I'm like,
Well,
it's
like the time gap is just sort of like, honestly, the time gap is like the reason that those two books were set in the 1750s was because I already was like, I swear to God, if I do like another like book that's Regency, I'm gonna lose it completely, you know. And so I was talking to my editor and I was like, we're like throwing out different time periods. And I was like, 1850s New York, it's disgusting. And she's like, okay, so not that. And I was like, 1660s, you know, like 1660s, you've got like the Great Fire of London, I think. I'm really kind of ignorant about it. And like, and I was like, Samuel Pepys, like someone he's like buried a thing of Parmesan cheese. And that's all I know about it. And like,
a very alluring time period.
I can make it really sexy. She's like, I'm hearing no. You know, so we settled on the 1750s as like far enough away for me to feel like I was writing in a fresh enough period of time, right? But not so far away that readers would be like, this is different, you know?
Yes. I feel like still feels very familiar for those of us like me who don't have all of that historical context. All right. So if our audience, if you have any questions, send them in now. Dana will bring them up on screen. And if you don't, I definitely have more. So maybe let's see if we have any that have come in. While we wait for someone to drop a question, Kat, do you have a favorite thing of all of the things that you've written?
So usually, like, I can give you like my least favorite is always the thing I'm editing at the moment. You know what I mean? Like, and I like revisions. Like, I am an author who really likes revisions, but like when you're revising something, all you can see is flaws, right? It's you know, which is the job that you're supposed to be doing, right? But it's hard to look at a book at that stage and be like, this is something anyone in their right mind could enjoy. You know, and then after it's out of my hands, I have a hard time really thinking about it because I can't go back and fix it. Right? Yeah. Like it's this like it's like an imperfect object that's out in the world and I don't want to deal with it, you know. The hardest thing I've written are the Page and Summers books. That's
interesting.
Yeah. Those are like, I love the main characters. I love the finished result. It is like, clues are really, really hard. Okay. Like, and when I look at someone who's written a series of like 52 cozy mysteries in the same village with characters that come back. Okay. And there's like like they happen sequentially in a way that makes sense. And like everyone's always the same character, right? Like, no, I managed like 7 continuity errors with 2 books. Okay. And so the third one, I'm writing it now. I have to hire somebody to go and, do you know what I mean? I'm going to have to hire somebody to do a series Bible and then check this book. I just don't have the level of attention to detail at all. Like, I mean,
it's very difficult.
Yeah. I mean, some people are just born able to do that, or they have like really practiced. And I guess I have other skills, just not that, you know? And so it is like, that's hard. Making clues happen in a way that like, for the second book in that series, I knew it was in trouble, and so I hired Rose Lerner. Okay, like she does book.
Oh yeah,
right. Okay, and in addition to being like an amazing writer, and so one thing she she explained to me like how clues work, which is like, I've read a million mystery novels, but I hadn't ever thought about how a clue.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, and so that is like, okay, like that's something that is useful information. Like you have to see the clue, and then the reader has to know that it's a clue, and then you have to consider, you know, there are steps. And so like the infrastructure of a romance novel is like intuitive to me in a way that the infrastructure of a mystery novel is not, and it's something that I have to really consciously pay attention to. But I really love the finished result.
Yeah, the finished books are wonderful. And I can definitely understand how I feel like that is beyond me mentally to be like, I love a good mystery and like a great whodunit, and also have no idea what would go into that process at all.
Yeah, it's like, and it is funny how like what you can internalize just by reading and what you have to actually consciously like step back and look at critically, you know, because I hadn't with romance novels, I hadn't really ever thought about it. I had just read a billion, and so like so I had a sense of what to do. Mystery novels, like, you really can't go on vibes. Like, you cannot wing it. Like, you have to have,
There's some reader expectations to be met.
Like, and you have to kill somebody. Like, you straight up, like, there has to be like something with stakes happening,
Yeah.
You can't just not do
Which
it.
Which is hard for an author who struggles to write villains.
It's true. I just had to I just have to sort of like not pay attention and just
exactly like write and don't look. It's fine. All right. Oh, we have this question from Sophie. The foundation of your HEAs is always deep friendship. How do you create that connection differently every time?
I mean, I think that goes back to, so like if the characters are really, really precisely them and exactly them and nobody else, then they can only be friends with one another in a way that's really precise and unique to them, right? And yeah, I do like writing friends, and that is one of the reasons why Friends to Lovers is just something that like works very easily for me, as a writer, because it's like you're starting out with that, with the basis of the relationship already there, right? They already like one another. All you have to do is build on how they like one another. Like that's like 80% of my job is done. And yeah, I really like, I like writing people who like one another. Like that is satisfying to me as a writer. And like that's like, I realize there are other kinds of storytelling, right? But like that's the one I like the most.
Love that. Thank you, Sophie, for that question. Dana, okay. Do you see any more books in the Cabot? So Good era? Yes, please, from Elizabeth.
So there's definitely the baseball book for next year. And then after that, I'm like, I hate not knowing what I'm writing next. Like I hate it. Like I hate it. And like I've been complaining every single day to everyone who will listen, which is at this point not a lot of people left. I have to finish this next page in Summer's Mystery, and then I'm like, what am I going to write? What am I going to write? Like I have to pitch a book and then sell it, and like, what will it be? And I don't know what it's going to be. It'll be 20th century, and it'll be American. Like that's like, I can't do all of that research and then only write. You know what I mean? Like there has to be. As for Cabot books, I don't know. Like I don't want to compete with myself. Like I don't, you know what I mean? Like I don't know. But like that era, that's
very exciting. Awesome. If you were writing your first books today, what, if anything, would you do differently? Thank you, Michelle, for that great question.
I think that like at this point, I am more aware of like, I realized the other day that when I, like just by happenstance, I noticed that when I have a character shrug, like I am cheating. Like there's a react, you know what I mean? Like I'm bypassing something. And that doesn't mean that that's just my own personal way of cheating. Like that other people can be normal about shrugs. I can't be, I guess. And like, and there are several things. There are like, that's just added to my list of like, things that I now go and check when I'm about to turn a manuscript in, right? Like I do a Control F for certain things. With my first book, I had no idea of any of those things. And I'm sure that there are a bunch that if I opened the book, I would find them, and I never will ever open the book. And so I won't ever know, so that's one thing. I would have handled Unmasked by the Marquess definitely differently. Like at this point, it's in 2023. We can look back at like in 2000. I wrote that in 2015, even though it came out like a year or two later. Like the idea of making a trans person a like grifter is not a good idea. I would not do that again. If I had a friend doing that, I would be like, let's take a step back and never don't do that. Okay. Like for sure, that's a big one. I'm sure there are other things that if I like let myself really think hard about it, I could like amass a pile of regrets because I'm just good at it.
Which
Um,
don't
no,
spiral.
no,
No need.
no, but I think it is valuable. You know what I mean? Like, I think it is
Yeah.
like, I also feel like it's like a healthy thing to do to be like, no, I would not do that again today. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and it doesn't necessarily, it's like, that's like, you know, I could like, yeah, I'm happy with that, you know?
Yeah. And I think too, writing about queerness, writing about gender, sexuality, I think, at least for me, like my own understanding changes so much as
Mhm,
I grow, as I interact with more queer people, like as I build my
mhm.
own community, as I read more, that I'm like, yeah, my thoughts on that from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 3 years ago are different than today, different than 5 years from now.
Yeah, and it is interesting also, like, like, there are nuances to how queer people are discussed and, like, what narratives are told that you don't necessarily, like, that you don't really pick up on until you're steeped in it, right?
Yeah.
And, like, one way of being steeped in it is being extremely online because you're a writer and because you're procrastinating, and so like, oh, and also I didn't think you were looking for regrets, Michelle. I get it. I totally get it. That's just where my brain is always going to go. Um, but like, I, I think that like, I spaced out. Sorry. What did you ask?
You're good. We were talking about, yeah, queer identity and like
Oh
thoughts
yeah.
on that
And
changing
so like,
over time.
I
Yeah.
mean, you wind up thinking about it more and you wind up developing a lot of nuance
Yeah.
and like that is something that you like almost by definition aren't going to have at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm thinking about this as my job right now,
Yeah.
and so yeah, we grow, we change.
Exactly, which is beautiful.
Yes.
All right, I think we have time for one more question. So, what are you reading and loving at the moment? And can you read when you write?
Yes, I can. Like there are like I am sometimes I will there are certain authors whose voice I worry about like in getting like into my voice, like and so I'll steer clear of
Mhm.
them when I'm drafting, not when I'm
Yeah.
revising, right? Um But I just finished Freya Marsky's, and I do hope I'm pronouncing her last name right. The power the Last Binding series. Okay. It's
Mhm.
if you haven't heard of it, it's like 1909 magic. All right.
Mhm.
And the first two books are already out. The third is it just came out on it's just up on NetGalley. And I'm completely obsessed. Like I am just in a continual loop of rereading all three of these books at this point. Like I'm stuck. I don't see a future in which I'm not just rereading those three books. Just like they're talk about like tightly plotted. Like there are things in the first book that like get resolved in the third, like, and you're like, oh my god, like this is a genius at work, But yeah, I love it, and the characters are so finely drawn, and I love the world and the magical system. 10 out of 10. Super happy.
I love that. Okay, I'm definitely adding those to my TBR because they sound amazing. Um, okay, yes, I'm seeing lots of love. Oh, and it looks like Dana also put a link to Freya's website in there. Thank you for that, Dana. And yeah, I think that is all the time we have. Thank you to everyone for joining us. Kat, do you want to share where everyone can find you online if they're not already following you?
My website is catsebastian.com, and Twitter and Instagram, I am at Cat S Writes. And I also have a newsletter, which is like the only thing that I guarantee that I update and remember to put news in. And the sign up for that is on my website.
Yes. I have reminded people so many times of the newsletter in Discord because I love the Christmas shorts that you do every year.
Yes.
So I know quite a few of us are looking forward to whatever this year's is. So everyone make sure to do that. And yes, if you are watching this interview and you're not familiar with our book club, there's a link in the caption to our Discord. Our summer read along thing is going to be Summer of STEAM. We're reading historical romances featuring protagonists in STEM fields. So definitely come and join us for that. The biggest thanks to Kat for spending her Tuesday night with us, giving us these incredible characters to spend our entire spring with. Um, Cat, I think, yes, as you can see from the group, we had such an absolutely wonderful, magical season. So truly thank you from all of us.
Oh, thank you. It's been so much fun also to see people's like reactions and stuff on Instagram and everything. Like the Lego covers, like in particular, obviously, but also just it is like very gratifying as a writer to see people reading your books and enjoying them. Because sometimes you forget. Like also this is all happening in the months like leading up to like a significant book release, right? So like, oh, people like my book is like such a good thing.
Right. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. And so fun for us. I know we, you know, Dana and I are both in publishing. We love getting to uplift backlist books. So great to also get to share those with everyone while you also have this brand new release coming out. Yeah, Sophie's Legos are absolutely incredible. All right. Well, Kat, I'm going to ask you to stick around while Dana closes the stream. But thank you again to everyone for joining us. Go enjoy your night. Be safe. Read some romance. And I'll talk to everyone in Discord. All right. Thanks, everyone.